I, 28, female, recently gave birth to my son about 2 months back. I've been living with a friend in her apartment. It's pretty cramped up here, but it's a better living arrangement than my parents' house. I'm a single mom. My ex-boyfriend is the father of my child, but when I told him that I wanted to keep the baby, I gave him the choice to walk away, and he chose to walk away. He doesn't want to be a part of the child's life. I did demand child support, but the payments only started coming in once our son was born. The terms of our agreement stated that he'd only be obligated to pay child support after the child was actually born and until he turned 18, and only after paternity had been established. He and I have no other contact apart from him sending the amount we'd agreed upon every month. I'm a freelance photographer, so there was no way that I could go back to work after the 5th month because there were quite a few complications, and I had to depend on my savings. I moved out of my rented apartment and asked my parents if I could live with them until my son was born. My parents and I don't really have a great relationship because they don't like my choice of career, but they agreed to let me live with them since I was pregnant. They didn't discuss anything about rent with me, so I assumed that I'd be living there for free, which was a far more preferable alternative than having to spend my money on rent every month when I wasn't working. So I lived with them for the first 2 months without any problems, and it was actually quite pleasant. I did contribute in my own little way by paying for groceries since I was the one who was consuming the most in that house, and also contributing to the water and electric bills. It wasn't a lot, but I was trying not to be a freeloader, and even that wasn't enough. In the first week of my 7th month, my parents told me that they didn't want to bring this up with me because it was embarrassing, but they needed me to pay rent. I was a little taken aback because they hadn't talked about that when I first asked them if I could move in with them, and I thought that the whole point of me living with them would be that I wouldn't have to pay rent, but they'd assumed that I was going to pay to live with them. And it hadn't even occurred to them that I might be wanting to live there for free because I was pregnant and out of work. They thought that I was eventually going to pay and didn't want to talk to me about it because it seemed tacky to talk about money. I told them that the only reason I'd move back in with them was because I couldn't actually afford to pay rent right now without burning through my savings, and I needed to save money because my pregnancy wasn't going to be an easy one. So, in case of any future medical emergencies, I needed to know that I could depend on my savings. Even though I did have medical insurance, it never hurt to be double safe, which is why I was being a little too financially conscious. But I could understand that they obviously didn't want to have a freeloader in the house. So I told them that once my son was born and I went back to work, I'd pay them the entire amount in one go, whatever I owed them. They just needed to let me live with them for free until I went back to work and could afford to pay them the rent money. This was a negotiation that I couldn't have with other landlords, but since these were my own parents, I expected them to be a little lenient. And I definitely did intend to pay them as soon as I could afford to. I'm not a thief. But my parents were skeptical, and after some deliberation, they told me that they couldn't just let me live there for free. If I wanted to live with them, then I certainly needed to pay rent, or I'd have to leave. It felt terrible that my own parents were kicking me out over something like this, and I tried to reason with them. I even told them that I was willing to sign any legal document that they made me agreeing to the fact that I'd pay them as soon as I went back to work, or even as soon as the child support payments started coming in. But they weren't ready to budge and told me that I could either pay them right then or I could leave. I tried to plead with them, but nothing worked, and eventually I had to pack my bags and move in with this friend of mine. She was kind enough to let me live with her, even though she herself isn't that rich. I promised her that I wouldn't be in her hair for long, but she told me that it didn't matter and made sure that I was comfortable. She took really great care of me, even more than my parents did while I was living with them. I'm very grateful for my friend because, had it not been for her, I probably would have been in big trouble. Now that the child support payment checks are being cashed, I can afford to split the rent and contribute. And once I'm fit enough to go back to work, then I'll be looking for a place of my own too. I was very upset about what my parents did because it wasn't as if either of them were poor and couldn't afford to let me live with them for a while without paying rent. My dad's a banker and my mom works in a marketing agency, so they definitely didn't lack anything financially. They were just being selfish and kind of miserly, which is why I didn't speak to them after they kicked me out. They did try to talk to me normally even after I'd left, but I didn't respond to their calls, and neither did I reply to their texts. I just didn't have anything to say to them, and I really didn't know what they had to say to me after what had happened. So, we didn't have any contact. Now that my son has finally come into the world, I've been posting about him a lot online, not his face or anything though, and everybody knows that I'm a mother now. A lot of my relatives have contacted me to congratulate me, and one of my cousins has even come to visit. My cousin visited me last week and posted a photo of that on social media, which my parents saw, and then reached out to me to ask if I was finally having visitors over. I didn't reply to that text either, so they called me, and when I didn't answer, they called me repetitively until I finally did. When I picked up the call, they demanded an explanation for why I wasn't talking to them. So, I told them that the way they kicked me out of their house just because I couldn't afford to pay rent for a couple of months was heartless of them, and I didn't want to speak to them. They got all defensive and said that it wasn't fair of me to expect them to just let me live with them without contributing to the cost of living there, which I did. It was little, but I did, and as an adult, I should understand and respect that. Then they said that I should just move on from it because it's all in the past now, and they want to meet their grandson. I was already pretty upset about them treating this so casually. So, when they said that they wanted to meet their grandson, I told them that I was an adult and I was free to make my own decisions. I had decided that they weren't going to see the grandson anytime soon. So now they needed to understand and respect that because I was hurt and I didn't want to see them. Then I disconnected the call and tried to ignore them. But they kept texting and insisting that I was overreacting because they thought what they'd done wasn't even that big of a deal. They kept saying that it was all in the past, so I needed to move on, which got on my nerves because even if it was in the past, I didn't like it back then, and there's no reason for me to be okay with it now. Besides, I get to choose if I want to move on or not, and if I don't, then I'm not going to. So, I argued with them on text for a while. Then they said that they'd talk to me when I was acting a little less crazy, so I lost it. Then I was so mad that I went online and typed out a rant about how my parents had always disagreed with my career choices, which is why they kicked me out of their house when I was heavily pregnant, only because they didn't agree with my choices and wanted to mess with me. So, they misled me into thinking that I wouldn't need to pay rent to live with them, but then suddenly they sprung it on me 2 months later and then told me to leave when they learned that I wouldn't be able to pay, just to humiliate me. Until here, it was all fine. But then I tagged some of their co-workers in the post to make sure that they'd all be able to see this post and get to know my parents better. And I believe that that's where I went a little too far. So now, all my relatives are against me and believe that I need to apologize to my parents. I have talked to a couple of my friends about this, but they think that what I did is not that bad because my parents were trying to gaslight me and didn't drop it even when they saw that I was clearly very stressed out, and they actually implied that I was crazy for reacting the way that I did. It's been almost a week since I made the post, and I took it down after almost 3 hours, during which a couple of people did see that post and even liked it. Only my relatives have talked to me about it, but my parents have had nothing to say, and the silence is even worse than them actually expressing how they felt about it. I would honestly rather just fight with them to get this over with, but them being silent doesn't make me feel any better about what I did. I genuinely don't understand if I should apologize to them or not, and I feel like both my relatives and my friends have a really strong point. I personally have no idea what to do, and I'm completely blank, so I'm here on Reddit to ask you guys what you think I should be doing about this. I don't feel guilty for making that post, but I do feel bad about tagging their co-workers in it because they had nothing to do with this, and I dragged them into my family drama for nothing, which must have been awkward for my parents at work. AITA for tagging my parents' co-workers in a post about them. Update 1. So I ended up apologizing to my parents not for the post in general, but for tagging their co-workers in the post. There was no need for me to do that, and I did it only out of spite, which was unfair. I sent them that text yesterday, but they still haven't replied to it yet. The only link I had with the rest of my family right now, my aunts, uncles, and cousins, is the cousin who came to visit me last week. He's the only person still talking to me because everybody else is just way too angry. He told me that the only thing people are talking about in my family text thread is that post. And they've been talking about it for days now, which seems a little unfair because I took that post down within hours of putting it up. And this isn't even about them, this is between me and my parents. So I don't understand why they have so many opinions about it. I was going to apologize to the rest of my family, but I don't think that they deserve it or need it because I didn't say anything bad about them. The people that I did mess with, I apologized to them, and now it's up to my parents if they want to forgive me or not. But my relatives have nothing to do with this, so they need to keep their mouths shut. My cousin has sent me a couple of screenshots of whatever discussions have been going on about me in the family group, and all I can say is that I'm really glad that he's on my side because the things that are being said about me are really awful, and honestly, it all speaks more about their characters than mine. They've made really nasty comments about me being a single mother, and there's also been a lot of speculation about why exactly my ex left me. Let me just say that none of the theories have anything good to say about me. All they want to talk about is how I must have driven the guy away, and how it's all my fault that my son will be growing up without a father because, apparently, I'm so difficult to be with. They pity my parents for ever having to deal with someone like me. It's all just a lot of rubbish, and they're obviously only gossiping about me because they have nothing better to do with their lives. It's sad because I was actually pretty close with these people growing up. We were a close-knit family that would get together at least 3 times a month. These people watched me grow up, And now these are the very same people who are making nasty comments about me just because of one post where I dared to speak about my truth. It doesn't seem fair at all. And what's worse is that my parents are a part of this text thread. They don't see anything wrong with what the others are saying about me, and not one of them has tried to defend me or take accountability. It's not even as if they're inactive. While they don't defend me or say anything bad about me, they do occasionally send laughing emojis and stuff whenever someone makes a horrible joke at my expense. It's just really nasty business, and I'm super disappointed in everyone. Update 2. It's been 4 days since I apologized to my parents for that post. Now, a couple of hours ago, they finally texted me back, only to tell me that they were not surprised that I'd taken things so far and said that I was a disappointment to them anyway, so they didn't care about the post. I thought that was kind of harsh, especially after I apologized to them and did the right thing. But just like they said to me, I expected the same from them too, so even I'm not surprised. I didn't want them to get away with believing that I'd apologized for just making that post. So, after that reply, I specified that I was only sorry for tagging their KO workers in it and not for anything else, because they definitely deserve to be called out for everything. I saw them typing for quite a while, but a text never came, and instead, they called me. My dad spoke to me. He told me that he and my mother were extremely disappointed in my behavior, especially because I talked about them trying to humiliate me for my career choices. According to him, that hadn't been their intention at all, and it was unfair of me to post about it and make them look bad. They told me that in the aftermath of that post, there had been a lot of gossip about them at their respective workplaces, and it was very embarrassing for them. My mother had even been targeted by a couple of her KO workers and had been reprimanded by her boss, and it was very insulting. I told them that I did apologize for that, and I also took that post down within a couple of hours of posting it. I can't exactly go back in time and undo what I did, so they have to make their peace with what happened. And also, they'd been very unkind to me when I was pregnant, but I'd made my peace with that, and I had let them go. It was they who tried to reach out to me afterward because they wanted to see their grandson, even though they were the ones who caused me so much stress and suffering while I was pregnant by forcing me to move out. And then they tried to pass me off as crazy for being mad at them. They'd never apologized for any of it, even though, according to me, what they did to me was worse than what I did to them. So, they should really count themselves lucky that they even received an apology. That didn't go down well with my dad, and he said that he could have filed a defamation lawsuit against me if he wanted to. But he forgave me because I was his only daughter, and I should be grateful for it. So, I told him that I was indeed grateful. And I just expected him to be the same way because even though I had apologized to him and my mother, they treated me like a second-class citizen after I became an adult. In the past, when I first told them that I didn't want to go to college and instead wanted to learn photography, we had a lot of fights over it. They used to say a lot of horrible things to me, including things like wishing I was never even born and that they hoped I got lost and never came back. I hadn't mentioned those things in my post. If I had, then they probably wouldn't have anybody on their side right now. So, I think even they should be grateful to me for not exposing them entirely. After that, the conversation just became too difficult to continue because my dad was screaming at me. If he wasn't even willing to talk, then I didn't see any reason for me to continue bickering with him. So I hung up and blocked him. I don't know if they're going to try to get back into touch with me or not, but if they do, then I'm not going to hold back. Update 3. It's been a week since my last update and that phone call with my father, and they still haven't tried to reach out to me yet. So, I'm assuming that they've given up on me entirely, and it's a huge relief because I'm already pretty stressed out. I do not need more of it. I did ask my cousin if they'd been talking about me in the group, and he told me that they have indeed been a lot more active after that phone call. My relatives had moved on from that post, and the topic of me and my ex-boyfriend and stuff, but now it's my parents who keep bringing it back up only so they can talk badly about me. I guess I'm their favorite topic of discussion now, and even while they're not talking to me, they definitely are talking about me, so I'm constantly on their mind. It's just a pity that it's not for any good reason. I find it so incredible that even when they were the ones who kicked out a pregnant woman, their own daughter, they still found a way to portray themselves as the victims. They were the ones who kept pushing me and gaslighting me. And when I finally snapped and made some stupid little post, it suddenly became a huge deal, and they are now the victims forever. It's all very frustrating and ridiculous, but I know that there's nothing I can do about it. So I just have to suck it up and let them go on trash-talking me because, at the end of the day, they're doing it behind my back since they don't have the guts to say any of it to my face. My cousin is on my side, and I have great friends. I'm also hoping to go back to work in a couple of days to get my life back on track, so I'm not going to worry about any of these irrelevant people and only focus on myself. Update 4. I finally started working again today, and due to some weird miracle, today was the day that my parents chose to come visit me at my friend's place. My friend was at work, and I had dropped my son off at another friend's place for a couple of hours since I was at work. So, there was nobody at home, and I don't check my phone unless it's an emergency while I'm working. I didn't even realize that my parents were waiting outside her apartment. They kept texting me, my mom, since my dad's blocked, for almost an hour before they finally decided to leave. I only discovered it after I was done with my work and it was time for me to go back home. All the texts were about how this was super insulting for them because they were visiting to see their grandson for the first time. And I didn't even have the courtesy to be at home to receive them. They said that not only was I a terrible daughter, but I was also a terrible mother for taking my son with me to work, which is what they assumed I did. The texts were all very entitled and bipolar, because in one text they were telling me that I was a horrible human being, and in the very next one, they were talking about how desperate they were to see me and their grandson, and that it was unfair that I was depriving them of that opportunity. I cannot even begin to understand why they'd expect me to let them visit me or meet my son after everything that they'd said to me and about me behind my back. I'm honestly just glad that I wasn't at home. I regret even telling them where I was going when I first left. I really shouldn't have done that, but I wasn't thinking straight at the time. But now this is just more of a reason for me to move out as quickly as I can. I'm going to miss my friend, but I don't want to bother her any longer, and I know that if my parents are aware of where I'm living, then they'll definitely try to come to visit me again. And I certainly don't want to create any trouble for my friend. Update 5. Hi guys. So I moved into my own apartment last week. Yeah, it finally happened and I'm really thankful for everything that I have. My friend was pretty sad to watch me go, but she understood. I can't say that she'll miss any of my son's midnight crying sessions. My own place is a lot smaller, but this is all I can afford right now, and I know that as I continue to work I'll get back to where I was in no time. It's been a month since my last update, and I blocked both my parents on every platform possible after they tried to visit me because I didn't want them around. They haven't tried to get in touch with me directly again after that, and I have my fingers crossed that they won't be able to find out where I am. I changed my phone number, and I told my friend that if my parents ever show up at her apartment, she definitely doesn't need to open the door. If they try to bother her, then she's free to call the cops. I'm just hoping that it doesn't come to that. Now, it's just me and my son, and we're definitely going to make it big. I'm just so sure of it.